Welcome back. You're listening to the Tuttle Group Radio Hour. I'm your host, Andy Tuttle, owner of the Tuttle Group branch over at Fairway Independent Mortgage Corporation, NMLS number 184325. We are here with Charles Hodge of Hodge's Architectural Firm. Told you about him earlier and how he is planning to change the way we take care and really serve our elderly through architecture, which is going to seem weird to you, but he's going to talk about that. But first, we want to talk to him a little bit about his background, what he does now, and we welcome him to the show here. Charles, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Andy. Pleasure to be here.
Good. Well, tell us a little bit first about your background, how long you've been doing this, and kind of what's your story?
Sure. Well, I mean, the Hodges family has been in Texas since the turn of the century, and I was educated here in Dallas, went to public schools in Dallas, graduated from the local system. So from that point, I progressed to Texas Tech University in Lubbock.
Get your guns up.
Got my degree in architecture from Tech and came back to Dallas ready to go to work. And so for the first 39 years of our organization, we designed some of the greatest retail opportunities in the country. We have done about 46 million feet of retail, over 400 projects, and we've done about 70 theaters that we've designed all over the United States. And our firm, Hodges Architecture, basically tracked the needs of the baby boomers. As we progressed through our career, we tried to provide for those of our same age group, and obviously the largest demographic group in the history of the United States. So as we began to branch out into other forms of architecture, one of the theories that I followed was the fact that healthcare could be improved and needed to be improved because of the coming wave of the boomers and their needs for healthcare and healthcare services. So if I could categorize or paint a word picture for you, I mean, basically we're standing right now on a beach and there's a 90-foot tidal wave coming behind us. It's 100 miles long and it's moving 100 miles an hour, and that tidal wave is dementia in America. We're not prepared. We don't have the facilities at this point. There are a lot of people building memory care facilities, but quite frankly, when my family went through the memory care issues, the highest level of care at that point was a locked wing in a nursing home.
So time out, Charles, because you covered a lot of ground there, and I want to make sure that I understand the picture and that we paint it. So first of all, just your experience, and I think that's important, and expertise. You said 49 million square feet?
46 million square feet.
So give me an example. You say you built theaters. So what types of...
We've done some of the largest in the country, 130,000 foot, 22 screen IMAX units, such as the Palladium in San Antonio, but we do some of the most fun theaters in the United States, such as Alamo Drafthouse Cinema and iPic and some of those chains.
So in other words, I mean, that's what I was trying to get at. Like 46 million is such a big number. I'm like, well, how many structures is that? And then you say 130,000 is a big theater. So you're building hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of retail facilities. You've had a massive amount of experience, first of all. So there's that.
Right.
And so you did all that, you mastered it, right? Clearly did it for almost 4 decades.
Correct.
Right. And then you mentioned, getting into healthcare, and you talk about your struggle with your family. So first of all, what happened with your family?
Well, my father was diagnosed in 1996. In early 97, he began to show signs of dementia and was finally diagnosed in late 96. And it was a 3-year struggle that took us from one facility to the next. When we became so frustrated with one facility, we would move to the other. And we're talking about what, at that point, were some of the most prestigious facilities, allegedly, in North Dallas. We really found that there was a lack of knowledge of how to deal with dementia. We found that the facilities themselves were basically a polar opposite of the needs of dementia patients. Many of the facilities were straight-in corridor, dead-end, and wandering is something that is soothing to a dementia patient. Well, when you hit a dead end and have to return to that same, it seems primitively simple to me that there needed to be a complete paradigm shift in architecture for dementia.
So, well, wait a second. And with all respect, that was the 90s. Surely they've gotten better by now, and they don't have those problems anymore, and they figured that out.
Well, you would think, and there have been some strides. Obviously, we began by designing facilities for other operators,
Right.
other organizations. We still were frustrated, though, by the fact that first-in cost took precedent over patient comfort and patient therapy. It's the reality of commercial real estate in today's world. But cost control should be put second, in my opinion. Having been a family member, having seen how the family had to interact and be forced to be very limited in their interaction with their loved one because of the inadequacies of the facility, just was a tremendous frustration agent for me, and one that really built this drive to change the standard of care.
You are listening to the Tuttle Group Radio Hour. We're talking with Charles Hodges here. If you have questions for him, please call us 469-319-0660 or go to andytuttle.com. Charles, and I don't want to dig in too much, but I think it's important. One, it's important for me just sitting here. I'm like, okay, you say frustrate. I don't understand. Like, I don't have a parent with dementia. So what kinds of things were you trying to do and interact with your dad that you couldn't do?
Well, one of the things that was just the tragedy of what happened with our particular journey was the fact that, you know, my father was an early riser. He worked very hard his whole life. He loved to be outdoors. He would go out and mow the yard in the hottest part of the day, which I never understood, but that was his physical fitness regimen. So being an early riser, he may wake at 4:30, 5 o'clock and be ready to go and have breakfast. Well, breakfast wasn't served for another hour and a half. And to control labor cost, a lot of the patients, which we consider to be guests, are forced to eat in a 1-hour window to control kitchen labor cost. My father was asked to eat when he wasn't hungry. When you ask a guest to eat when they're not hungry, it's going to lead to poor nutritional results. And I think that's one of the things that was just a preliminary frustration for us. But as we began to dig more and more, I watched my mother go to that facility every morning, pick up my dad's clothes, take them home, launder and prepare those clothes to make sure he had clean clothes every day. They didn't even have a laundry for the families in the facility. So you start adding all these up, and it builds a fire in you to change the entire paradigm of the business. And I think that's really the journey that led us to develop Tribute. Tribute Senior Living is a facility that we gathered the best and the brightest around the United States to become team members for us and throw out all convention and change the paradigm for senior care.
That's huge, and we're going to get to that. And what I want to do here, though, is I want to dig in to make sure I understand one more time kind of how long you dealt with this and and understand the problem, which is because of the way the system is set up now and labor costs and being important and all that, because she's not cheap to have senior care, like you say. It's not cheap.
That's right.
But because of all that, what it did is it took your dad, and it doesn't just take your dad. It takes, especially if you have dementia and you have the mental, and I don't even understand, none of us do, like you said, it's the tidal wave coming.
Right.
But how much that must rattle that person, that they have one thing that they can do, whether eat at a certain time and do this, and now they can't do any of that.
That's right.
And they have no control.
There are 3 enemies to a dementia patient, and those are loneliness, helplessness, and boredom. And I felt like the architecture fell so short of fulfilling a cure for any of those 3 symptoms that it just seemed incredible to me that we weren't designing state-of-the-art facilities. These people earn the best we have. They deserve that. And it wasn't happening. So that's what drove us to begin the studies and the research that led to Tribute.
And how long did your dad go through these? How many years?
He passed in 2000, late 2000. And, so it was about a 3-year struggle. I would say that may be the average, but there are a lot of people that I know that have been struggling for 7 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what started your passion in your heart to go change through architecture.
Correct.
And Tribute is that answer.
That is correct. And we've assembled an unbelievable team. When I began doing my research,
you did assemble a great team, and that's what I want to talk about when we come back. Welcome back. You are listening to the Tuttle Group Radio Hour. We are here with Charles Hodges, principal and founder of Hodges Architecture Firm. Architectural firm? Excuse me. And we are talking with him about a very close story to him. He's been in architecture for 40 years. My goodness, building tens of millions of square feet of retail space. But his dad, to do a quick summary of the last segment, if you're just tuning in, was diagnosed with dementia and then Alzheimer's. Is that how that flows?
Right.
And so in the late 90s, middle 90s, and they struggled personally with going to top-notch, most prestigious healthcare facility after healthcare facility, and just not being set up for treating dementia patients. And some of the examples, Charles, stop me if I'm wrong here, was these things that I didn't get, and you probably don't get either, is, unless you're struggling with this now, is that these healthcare facilities are set up to serve food 1 hour, like in 1 hour blocks. You got to eat out about an hour. And his dad, like probably many dementia patients, didn't want to eat then. And they don't have their identity anymore, and they walk. It's healthy for dementia patients to have room to walk and wander, and they have no room. And all of these little tiny things. They don't have laundry facilities on site, so the family can wash the clothes there on site and be with their family. They don't have any of this stuff, and it just these little details just add up to make probably not a very good experience for the patient that you call guest appropriately, or the family. Did I get that correct?
I think that's accurate.
And so you, through that, used your skill that you had and put a passion into building facilities that would be better for our elderly, right?
Correct.
And the answer to that is Tribute. So talk to us about Tribute.
Well, Tribute, as I said in the last segment, was born of frustration, and we really saw from the family member standpoint and perspective that the designs that existed were woefully short, and they did not embrace the therapy that architecture truly can be. And as we began to formulate the designs for Tribute, we designed facilities for a lot of other people, but we saw the elements in what they viewed as first in place cost and the priorities that took. Very simple things like air conditioning systems, for instance. With just a little research, you find that one of the major agitation generators for dementia patients, and agitation is a big issue in dementia because that fearfulness, that helplessness they rage out in agitation. Well, one of the things that triggers that is loud mechanical noise. So we found that those who wanted to use cheap first in place air conditioning systems or a through the wall system, we call them wall shakers because they're like a system you would see in a cheap motel. That compressor bangs on and grinds when it is compressing to create the cool air, and that is just a tremendous agitator. Why in the world would you use that? Well, because that was the cheaper version of what could be chosen at that point. So as we began to see people make those choices, we really tried to talk some out of that, and we basically said we're going to have to build this ourselves if we're going to do this right. And so it was a commitment of 3.5 years of research. It was a commitment of 3.5 years of partnering with organizations we felt like were the cutting edge or had the highest level of care in Texas and in the United States. And that led us to formulate our partnership. The partners that we chose, we began looking for our scientific partner. I think each dementia facility should in fact be research-based. That design should not come from anything but the actual research. And we began to reach out for a scientific partner, and we chose Dr. Paula Grammas, who in the past was the director of the Garrison Institute for the Aging at Texas Tech. Obviously, a Tech grad, I sought what expertise was available in my university. She is now the executive director of the Ryan Institute for Neuroscience at the University of Rhode Island. University of Rhode Island probably is making a huge push relative to some of the other universities towards neuroscience, brain health, and dementia. She was chosen to come lead that effort, and that's why we partnered with Dr. Grammas. One of her main areas of interest is vascular dementia. Let's talk about that because I believe that a lot of dementia, as she does, a lot of dementia is categorically designated as Alzheimer's when in fact it may be vascular dementia. Vascular dementia is born from the compromise of your vascular system not delivering oxygenated blood to the brain and therefore starving the brain off that rich nutrient of oxygen that is needed. And what's good for the heart is good for the brain. And if you have a good circulatory and vascular system, that can help aid the health of your brain and preserve that health longer in life. We live sedentary lifestyles. We eat at fast food restaurants. We do all the things that are probably bad for our brain health. And I think Dr. Gramus is leading some tremendous research in that field so that we can really look at vascular dementia, figure out the nutritional needs to help detain that progression of vascular dementia. And I think we're going to discover that in the dementia field, there are 150 different derivative kinds of dementia when it's all said and done. And so trying to apply one set of therapy paradigms that'll cover all issues, I think is a mistake. And I think that's why we started Tribute.
So what you've done in architecture and in finding the scientists and the thought leaders on how to treat and therapy, you're putting those together in a place that will create a agitated less, like it's less agitation for
Correct.
the guests.
Sure.
And the flexibility to decide what's best for, not a one-size-fits-all approach to the therapy that they get.
Correct.
But a learning, the doctors and the people that are giving are learning as much as the guests.
Right.
And working together to give the best experience possible.
And I think that's part of the disease progression tracking. If we have designed a correct facility, it will be one that can flex with the new therapies as they come along. Right. So it's incumbent upon us to design a neutral palette, if you will, in each area so that it can evolve. And so the better therapy techniques that we track and we see are aiding us in detaining the progression of the disease, we want to be able to adopt those and not have to tear out walls and tear out everything that we've done. So creating a neutral palette so that this research can be ongoing and embraced in the facility is, I think, paramount to designing something that isn't obsolete the day it's open.
For time's sake, we've only got 1 minute left, maybe able to push it a little bit, but you mentioned HVAC, that compressor agitation. What other things are, I think you mentioned something about lighting. Isn't that also
lighting,
important?
Amazingly, I looked at a facility that opened in the last 12 months, and it had the most glare-ridden fluorescent strip lighting that you'd see in a car body shop, yet that's the type of lighting that they use. Well, glare, if you think about dementia, if you were to rub Vaseline on your glasses, you would get a sense of the type of visual acuity that a dementia patient has to suffer through. Glare then completely amplifies that. And to put that in a facility that is supposed to be current and within, today's world, it's just primitive.
So what you've done is you've thought of all these things and you've put those things in place and put that structure and architecture and lighting and everything all the way down to the studs to make sure this is the most comfortable place possible.
When you walk in the front door of Tribute, it'll feel more like Lifetime Fitness than it does going in your grandmother's parlor. And I'll apologize to those who like floral drapes and overstuffed chairs, but that's not what Tribute's all about. We want residents and guests that come in with the drive to fight the progression of this disease, brain training, physical training, nutritional training, all of these things. The boomers were not raised to sit and go silently into this disease. They're the most physically fit, the most nutritionally aware. We've designed a facility that we think will embrace that not only now, but for the next 30 years.
It's fantastic. If people want to find out more about Tribute and the facility and get a hold of you, one, go to our website, andytuttle.com. We'll have all the links there. Two, you can call us or text the main number that you should have by now, 469-319-0660. We will get you connected to Charles' team to talk to you about that instead of a consultation. But what else should they know? Where else can they go, and how should they interact with you to find out if this is for them?
Well, unfortunately, we're seeing early onset now in the 40s. And if people in their 40s to late 50s, we're seeing a lot of early onset, approximately 5% of those. I would suggest that if you feel like either your loved one or your mother, your father, your spouse is showing signs, I would go first to your family physician, have that physician recommend a consult with a neurologist, and I think they will lead you down that pathway of getting the true diagnosis first. Once we know the exact type and derivative of dementia, then I think it's time to start talking about the therapies and the opportunities for therapies and residents.
And great, and that's where you would come in with the Tribute. And what's the website for you?
It's HodgesUSA.com.
HodgesUSA.com to find out more about that and all your projects, but especially the tribute would be a great place to go find out about that. Thank you so much for your time today, Charles.
My pleasure, Andy. Thanks for having me.
You bet. My pleasure. And guys, if you do want to find out, remember that's all the stuff, andytuttle.com. You know the number. Get involved. If this is something that means something to you, you're going through this right now, we want to help you with that. So definitely reach out to us if you forgot that. Where to find him at HodgesUSA.com, HodgesUSA.com. But we'll connect you with him for sure and make sure you're taken care of. Thank you for the guests here, my production partners, production director Dan, my show producer, and the entire family here at 660 AM The Answer. And thank you for listening to Tuttle Group Radio, where we're making financial intelligence a priority in the community. Have a great weekend.
You've been listening to Tuttle Talk on 660 AM. You can reach Andy at 469-319-0660. That's 469-319-0660. Or email him at answers@andytuttle.com. Don't forget to become a fan of his show by going to facebook.com/Tuttle Group. You can also catch previous shows by going to andytuttle.com.